Hello, I'm Msgr Jim Lisante. Today on Personally Speaking, I'll be joined by actor and singer Hunter Ryan Herdlicka. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr Jim Lisante. An actor and singer and teacher, Hunter Ryan Herdlicka, joins me now. Hunter Ryan is a Dallas native and a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University, who is best known for starring on Broadway in the Tony Award-winning revival of A Little Night Music opposite Catherine Zeta-Jones and Angela Lansbury, followed by Bernadette Peters and Elaine Stritch. His other New York credits include Once Upon a Mattress and Dear World opposite Tyne Daly. Hunter has sung alongside Liza Minnelli, Hugh Jackman, and David Hyde Pierce, amongst others. He appeared in and helped produce the award-winning documentary Elaine Stritch, Shoot Me, and her biography called Still Here, about the legendary actress who was a close friend of his. Hunter teaches at New York University, Carnegie Mellon University, the University of Alabama, and a number of other top schools around the country. And he's here with us today to tell us more about his life, his career, his faith, what he's doing on quarantine, and the values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking the great actor and teacher, Hunter Ryan Herdlicka. We welcome Hunter Ryan Herdlicka on our show. He has been here with us before, maybe 5 or 6 years ago at least. So let me ask you what I think I asked you back then, but for our many listeners around the country now, give us the background on that wonderful name.
Oh, Herdlicka. It's so technically it's a Czech name,
Okay.
but I don't really have any Czech family. My dad's father was adopted, and so it's an adopted name.
Okay.
And so primarily I'm like British and German. I'm not Czech, but I have a Czech name and no Czech family.
Okay, now let's take the first two. It's a very unusual thing. I don't have that many Hunters that I've met along the way.
Oh yeah. So I don't know how my mom really came up with that. I really don't know how she thought of it. But I do know that my middle name is Ryan. And when she decided on Hunter and I had Herdlicka, she said, "Oh, I want his initials to be HRH. And so I can find a name that starts with an R."
His Royal Highness.
Exactly. Everyone says, "Oh, your initials are Her Royal Highness." I say, or His Royal Highness. It doesn't have to be her.
No. We had Andrew Reynolds on a few weeks ago, and he said something similar, right, about his background. But all right, now here's my first question. We've had on a number of times Dr. Bill Baker, who was president of PBS. He has written a great book on how an artist, which you are, has to not just be an artist, but has to, if he's going to succeed in any way, not only be an artist, but an entrepreneur. Now, this was even before COVID. In light of COVID, are you able to be both artist and entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I think, before COVID, I think my first passion is really teaching. And so, being an actor has always allowed me to teach, especially appearing on Broadway or other shows around the country. People have always said, "Oh, we should bring him to our school and speak to our kids," or things like that. And that's really my first passion. I love that. And so before the pandemic, about the full year, 2 years before, I was really pursuing a lot more of that work, teaching at universities, being a guest artist at various universities. And I had visited about, I think, 12 universities in 2019 and taught at those schools. And so that was really my big passion. And then when the pandemic started, around the beginning of it, I began working with high school juniors and seniors privately to help them get into college. And so as the pandemic grew and grew and grew, I started to pursue that work more and more because I saw that I was not going to be going back to acting anytime soon. And so I have now about 109 private students.
Wow, good.
That are all high school juniors and seniors that I, work with privately to get them ready for their college auditions, because college auditions, if you're going into acting or musical theater, now they're extremely competitive. You know, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of kids auditioning for each college program, and often college programs are only taking like 6 or 8 kids total.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're auditioning at a school like Carnegie Mellon or Juilliard or the University of Michigan or Cincinnati Conservatory, you know, getting in is like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
You know, you maybe have 6,000 or 8,000 applicants, and then the school takes 8.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second. I've seen Hunter Ryan on stage, a little night music, the one about the mattress, Once Upon a Mattress.
Oh, yeah, Once Upon a Mattress.
So I've seen you on stage. You're a gifted actor. So I guess I'm wondering, for these students, whether they're high school or college, I've often thought that someone who's a talented actor as you are, it's a gift, it's a given. Can it really be taught or trained to take someone who's a actor and make them something special? Is it even possible?
You know, that's a great question, and people actually ask that all the time. I think ultimately it is possible. I think making someone an actor is possible, because the only thing that prevents somebody from not being able to act is the voices in their head telling them they don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
You know, because to be a good actor, all you have to do is to be able to access your imagination and shut off those voices, the squawking vultures that say, you can't remember lines, you can't memorize, you don't know how to do this, you know, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what it's like to be a nurse, you've never been a nurse in your life. You know, you can't play a doctor, you don't know what it's like to be a doctor. When in actuality, there are just some really easy, simple techniques that kind of quiet those voices. And in actuality, you know, like if I had to play a doctor, I've never been a doctor, but do I know what it's like to take care of somebody? Yes.
Right.
You know, I've never been a lawyer, but do I know what it's like to, you know, plead a case? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've never been, I've never lost a child, but do I know what it's like to lose a parent? Yes. And so when we break it down to really simple terms like that, and we can quiet those voices in our head that say, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to do this, you're not good, you're not an actor, you don't have training. I have seen people with absolutely zero training that are in their 40s and 50s all of a sudden morph in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes to being able to act brilliantly.
Okay.
And so I do think that acting can be taught, but it's about accessing the imagination, and it's about quieting these voices, these that, you know, keep us, these insecure performers in our head. I don't necessarily think singing can be taught brilliantly. I think you have to have some sort of an innate gift or ability somewhere. Yeah. You know, you can teach pitch, and you can teach tone, and you can teach relaxation to help the vibrato come through. But I have seen students that they are really just tone deaf. They do not have any sort of a natural God-given ability whatsoever. You know, and I have seen them struggle for years and years to be able to match pitch, and sometimes it is just not possible.
Not doable, right? Now let's stop you there for a second. You said how hard it is to get into a good drama school. Even harder in some ways, and in some ways you would know this. You know, for our listeners, Hunter Ryan comes out of college with his degree, and he gets a part on a Broadway stage right away. But for most people, that's not going to happen. And even if they get one part, the next 2 or 3 parts may not come. The next 50 parts may not come. Yeah. When you're dealing with these young, potentially successful actors, but potentially long-waiting actors, do you want to encourage young people to go into a field where they're going to face such standard and regular no's?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's a real struggle because, you know, I actually just finished teaching 9 minutes ago. It's a real struggle because I do work with some kids that I believe their real calling is probably in a different field. You know, but at this point, I think my job is to help them try to achieve their dreams of getting into these college programs the very best I can. And I will let that do the work for me. When they don't get in, then that will help them. That will trigger something in their brain to say, wait, are there other things I should do? Do I have other interests? I didn't get in. What does this mean? You know, because I don't want it to be my job to stomp on their dreams and say, you know, you really don't have the gift for this.
Yeah.
But when I see that they have other interests, I definitely talk about that. Okay. When I see them not getting into these programs, I definitely say, are there other things that you could see yourself doing? I mean, you don't have to, but do you like, you know, what else do you like? Do you like math? Do you like science? Do you like books? But I do, for kids that do ultimately decide to do this, that either do get in somewhere or they don't get in somewhere, I do always talk about, well, even the most talented kids are dealing with rejection. My most talented student, he didn't get into some of the top programs in the country, and we were both surprised. And I said, rejection is going to become every single day in the professional life of an actor. I said, every single day. I said, after 2 years of starring in a Broadway show, I would go to auditions all the time and not get the part. Wow. I said, I would be in a Broadway show, starring role, Tony-nominated revival. I go to an audition right before a matinee, and they'd say, "No, we don't like you. Not for you. Not this role isn't for you." And I'd say, then I had to go do my show. I said, it was so strange. I said, but it happens, and it's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah.
And so I do think that if you decide to pursue acting, you have to understand that no matter how successful you are, there are still going to be parts you don't get. There are still major movie stars that have to do auditions and they don't get roles.
Wow.
And it's really amazing. You have to have a thick skin, and you have to understand that not getting a part sometimes has nothing to do with your talent. There are other factors at play. What do you look like? What's your appearance? What's your race? Who do you know? Where did you go to school? Who are you friends with? What's your social media look like? I mean, you have no idea sometimes.
You said a moment ago, Hunter, that what you do sometimes as a teacher, mentor to these kids is to help them to still the voices in their head that fill them with doubt. But the things you're saying that you do as an acting mentor teacher, that's actually what a therapist does. Did you ever think of a new direction for yourself in terms of therapy?
Sadly, I have no interest in going back to school, but I go to a therapist every week, and I think when you study spirituality, you're also constantly, reminding yourself of things that, in a sort of way, like therapy, and things like forgiveness, things like, letting go, trusting God, things like that. Yeah. And so I do have a lot of things in my teaching that are like therapy that I've either learned from religion or I've learned from my therapist. And so there are a lot of times where I do see myself as a therapist and a teacher.
Really? Yeah, you sound like one, actually.
Yeah. And these kids, they're sometimes when they don't get into a school, it sends them just to the brink. They say, "Gosh, I just want to jump off a cliff. I just don't want to do this. What does this mean?" And so then that leaves you as a therapist for them.
Hunter, you mentioned in passing a few moments ago something I didn't know about you. You said, do I have an experience of everything in life? No, but I know some things that help me, that inform my acting. But you mentioned the loss of a parent. I didn't realize you had lost a parent.
My mom actually passed away in February. And
I'm sorry.
It was very unexpected. It was the coronavirus hadn't really started. The pandemic hadn't started, but, we've now learned that it was here in America. Mm-hmm. And so I've wondered, she died of pneumonia and complications from pneumonia, and she was in the hospital and not responding to any antibiotics or treatment. And so we've all wondered, was she a very early case of coronavirus? We don't know. Did she have all the symptoms? Yes. Did it come on very suddenly and quickly? Yes. Wow. Did she go into ICU and not respond to any antibiotics or steroids or treatment? Yes. Was she put on a, breathing tube and a, breathing machine? Yes. And so then we go, wait, was it a very early coronavirus? And she had underlying conditions. She was a cancer survivor with a weak immune system, but, she had had pneumonia and bronchitis early in her life and survived those.
Right, right. Well, there's no rhythm or rhyme.
I often find myself saying that she died of coronavirus because it was just so unexplained, but I don't truthfully know.
Yeah.
But yeah, she died. Well, now it's last year. Now it's 2020. Now we're into 2021. And she was only 65.
How did you cope with that?
Well, it was odd because so many times in my life, she'd been sick. Mm. And so there were so many times already in my life where I had or my family, we had already kind of mourned her loss.
Yeah.
There were multiple times where we thought she was going to die, or the doctor would say she's going to die overnight, or she's not going to make it through till tomorrow. And, you know, miraculously she would. And so I had already mourned her death like 15 times, maybe more.
Yeah.
You know, and so when it actually happened, you know, I don't think it hit me until maybe a few days later.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at a point where I was in New York and I was busy and I had to compartmentalize it for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and I found myself kind of, waiting to mourn, saying, well, I'll mourn probably in like 5 days when I fly home and I can be in her house by myself.
Yeah.
And I gave that time. I said, this is when I'm going to do it. I'm going to get through until then. And then I went over to her house by myself, and I had, you know, and I cried and I sat there for as long as I needed to. And that was kind of my mourning period.
Yeah. Hunter, and, tell me something good about her.
Oh, she was, I think the thing that I love about her is she was so creative. She was not an actress or a singer, but she was so creative. And so people always say, where did you get your talent or your love for the theater? And I say, I guess it was from her. You know, she was an incredible, like, designer, a craftswoman, interior decorator. You know, she did all sorts of just incredible things of design. And, you know, it was really amazing. So she was super creative. And she was also brilliant woman.
Wow. Okay. That's quite an influence to have on you. Now, another background piece on you, Hunter. Some years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, one of the public relations fellows that we work with said he had a guest for us he thought we would like, and I didn't know why. So he recommended to us a guy named Josh Canfield. So we had Josh on our show. He came into the studio in New York, and we had a great interview with him. And that's when I found out that he was, in fact, a believer whose parents had been ministers. Now he's a big part of your life right now. Do you guys, as people who are together, also share faith?
We do. Yeah, we do. And that's a big part of our relationship and kind of how it started. You know, that's something that really drew me to him at the very, very beginning, was finding out what a strong Christian he was. And I was like, wait, you're gay and you're a Christian, right, and you believe that both are possible, and you don't think I'm going to hell, and you're an actor? Like, what? You know, you don't meet very many spiritual actors and actresses.
Yeah.
And you really don't meet many that are Christians. You know, yeah. Christians have kind of a bad rap in the arts community.
Right.
You know, and so when I found one that was kind of an actual, you know, Jesus follower, I was like, wow, this is really unique. I got to pay attention to this. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's definitely something that has brought us together, and you know, definitely something at the beginning too.
Yeah. You know, one of our guests years ago was Victoria Clark, and right after her, we had Kelly O'Hara in, and both of them said, which was interesting, that is two people in the arts who are very strong in their faith. They found sometimes that they had to be almost countercultural to the culture of the arts, because the arts was not very strong in embracing those who were Christians. Both of them said we have to kind of support each other because there's not a lot out there to support us within the arts movement. Do you guys ever get blowback for your beliefs?
I don't know about blowback, but you get, you know, when you tell people that you're a Christian or that you're religious, or sometimes, I mean, actually not sometimes, almost all the time, they go, oh, they have a you know, kind of reaction. And I have to immediately say, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm not racist. I'm a Christian, but I believe in immigration. I believe in letting people, you know, leave their country and come here to pursue a better life. Right. I'm a Christian, but I love people. Everybody. I love people. I'm a Christian, but yes, no matter who you are, you're welcome at our church. Yeah. You know, I'm a Christian, but I believe in hospitality. Yeah. You know, and so I think it's just so heartbreaking. I was talking to my grandmother last night, who's 86, and she's been a Church of Christ, you know, Christian for her whole life. And I said, you know, it's actually kind of a bad thing in a lot of communities to be a Christian right now. I said, I think a lot of Christians have lost sight of what are the core values of Christianity. Yeah. You know, you say, you know, we have churches, and we have, you know, even places in New York that say, well, we don't we believe that being gay is a sin, and so we don't allow those people to come to our church, and that's not up for me to make the judgment call on every aspect of that in the whole wide world. But I believe that no matter who you are, you should be welcome in a church. It's kind of like, well, if you believe being gay is a sin, and then you shouldn't come to that church, okay, but did Jesus tell the prostitutes that they weren't welcome? So even for the people that believe that homosexuality is a sin, Jesus wouldn't have turned them away.
No, I think that the concept of all are welcome should be in every Christian church, and no doubt about it. I had recently two a couple, but they're a lesbian couple, come with their baby and asked the question, would I baptize the baby? And I said, sure. And they said, well, we've been turned down by several other churches, because of us being a lesbian couple. And I thought, first of all, why would you want to punish the baby for what you perceive to be the life of the parents? And again, what did Jesus do? What would Jesus do? And as you and I both know, he doesn't say a whole lot about the gay question at all. He does talk a lot about love and welcoming people. So I think you're onto something there. I want to talk about another good Christian lady, a colorful one that you and I shared in common. Here's a picture to jar the memory.
Oh, what a Elaine Stritch, true Catholic.
Good old Elaine. I'll tell you the truth. We had her on. I had a TV show then, and we had her on a lot. But she was always, without exception, in any given year, the most difficult guest we could ever have. One day we had her and Edward Herman, and she told him, I want your hat. And he gave it to her. And I said, why did you give her your hat? And he said, because she really frightens me. Now, this somewhat frightening lady to some people was beloved by you, and you became her close friend. Elaine Stritch, tell us, how do you deal with someone who's a difficult personality? How specifically did you come to embrace her and get her to relax around you when she can be, as she admits, a highly defensive person?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think, when somebody is so defensive and somebody is so kind of demanding and harsh like she was, you have to always remember it's coming from a place of fear.
Yeah.
And so her being difficult was always because she was scared.
Yeah.
And so once I understood, and that goes for everybody. And so once I understood that, I developed a deep sense of compassion and patience. Mm. And I thought, okay, my job isn't just to, placate. My job is to really get to the bottom of what is she scared of and how can I make her less scared at this moment? Yeah. So if it had to do with a simple thing like she didn't want to get in the car because she didn't trust who was driving the car and what was going to happen, yeah. I had to understand that it's not about her. She didn't like being in a yellow cab. She right. was afraid of being in a car in traffic. Mm. She didn't, maybe she was difficult about getting scheduled for an interview or getting to the interview on time or getting, these questions. And then I had to say, well, it wasn't about her just being a diva. It was about her being afraid of her talking about herself in an interview. Yeah. What is she going to have to face? And so that was the first step, of realizing that her behavior was all fear-based and fear-driven.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I think she really was able to relax around me because I think she knew that I liked her for who she was, and she knew that I got such a kick out of all of her, idiosyncrasies and all of her little things that made her tick. And she also saw that, most of it I put up with. I put up with a lot of it. And we also, oddly enough, we shared a really similar sense of humor. I'm very, very, very dry, and I'm very blunt and tell it like it is. And I will not hold back if I'm thinking something, I won't be mean and rude, but, very much like her, I really don't hold back. If somebody says, well, what'd you think of that movie? I say, it's the worst movie I've ever seen. And just very truthfully, it was terrible, so yeah. I think she really appreciated that, and she felt some safety in that.
Do you know where, Hunter, in you, the compassion would come from to recognize this woman is operating out of fear, and once we get past the fear and she relaxes and trusts, she's going to be beautiful, and she was, but something in you saw beyond that?
Mm-hmm. I think it had to do with a couple things. Both of my parents are alcoholics, and so they were both sober. My dad's still sober, and so learning a little bit about Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step programs, and also Al-Anon. I went to Al-Anon when I was I was trying to get my mom sober, and I learned a lot through the 12 steps. Mm-hmm. And then I learned a lot just through my own struggles of when I am rude and angry and demanding, what's really going on. And I was able to see, well, I was just afraid. Yeah. I was anxious. I was afraid.
For our listeners around the world, can you tell us, when they want to learn more about you, Hunter Ryan, where mm-hmm. should they go online?
Yeah. So, I think now our world has transitioned so much to social media. I think mm-hmm. the most relevant place to go is Instagram. You can type in my name, Hunter Ryan Herdlicka, or you can simply type in HRH.
Okay.
ERDLICKA. Yeah, right. And it comes up. HR Herdlicka comes up. Or I have a website, which is hunterryanherdlicka.com.
Okay. Hunter Ryan, thank you for being on Personally Speaking again. You're delightful. Not only talk about acting in the arts, but about faith and values and the things that matter in the world we live in. I really think that if this doesn't work out, you're the perfect therapist, even if it means going back to school, because you have so much insight and compassion and sensitivity. And I thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Thanks so much, Hunter. As we end today's program, I want to thank all of you for being with us. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you can send them to me through my website, which is www.closeencountertv.com. All one word, closeencountertv.com. To listen to our Personally Speaking podcast with some of our most recent shows, please go to YouTube and search under Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante and subscribe. Personally Speaking is also available as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and Spotify. You can also listen to past episodes by going to www.ollmp.org, ollmp.org, and you get not only recent shows, but also Msgr Jim's weekly homilies. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jadovitz, and thank you all so much for being with us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.